Is it a struggle? Yes, we have to realize our strengths and our weaknesses. Hi, and welcome to YYNet, and I'm your host, Janice, helping others to reach their goals by interviewing inspiring guests with interesting topics to help you reach your goals and get you from ordinary to extraordinary. Today's topic is spiritual faith in professional sports. And I have a great favorite here from the NBA, retired professional basketball player Kevin Porter. He served for 11 seasons in the NBA and was also a coach. Welcome to the show, Kevin. How are you today?
Thank you, Miss Newman. I'm doing fine. How are you?
I am super. I am so happy to have you on the show. Um, Unfortunately, with sports, kids all want to be on a professional team. They admire the players, they want to be the players, but it's less than 2% of people actually make it to the NBAs. And you are part of the 2%.
Yes.
Yes. So I want to talk to you about, like, when you were a child, did you think about being a professional athlete when you were like below eighth grade? Was that on your radar? Were you thinking about that? Did God plant that in your heart to do that?
Well, my dad was a semi-pro baseball player,
Oh,
and he had some success in the Negro League because he's from Blytheville, Arkansas. He played down there a little bit.
yeah.
And my brother and I, we were baseball players to initial when we became athletes in Little League and Pony League. So we were raised as baseball players.
Wow.
But in the city of Chicago, it's not a real marketplace for baseball players because of the weather. You know, you can't recruit, you can't come into the city of Chicago and see a good baseball game.
Mm,
So I'd say in my freshman year, well, eighth grade, I turned my desires to basketball.
okay.
And I wanted to get a scholarship. My mom and dad, we lived in the housing projects, very poor upbringing. I went to DuSable High School, and my goal was to get a scholarship, not necessarily to play pro basketball, but just to get a scholarship that maybe I can come back and help my mom and dad uh, financially.
Okay.
And the Lord blessed me to get that scholarship. And I went to St. Francis of Pennsylvania, which is a university in Western Pennsylvania,
Mm,
uh, probably 1% African American,
wow.
and just a huge transition for me.
Mm,
But I knew that I did not want to come back to Chicago unless I had my degree. So I
okay.
concentrated basically in high school on basketball for 4 years, and that enabled me to go to St. Francis on a full scholarship.
Now, I know you said that that was a transition.
Mhm.
How was your faith with that? You went to a religious school.
Right,
There's hardly any African Americans there. So you're already crossing boundaries. And this is in the late 60s.
right.
And there's already having racial issues, walks. Martin Luther King was shot in 68. I mean, all of this was going on. So how is that with your faith to walk into that?
Well, it wasn't easy. It was tough. St. Francis is a very unique university.
Mm.
It's considered a basketball school,
Oh,
and usually the African Americans up there are the basketball players. So we were well taken care of.
mm,
Um, like you said, there was some racial things going on all over the world at that time.
right.
And we encountered some of those things at St. Francis, but you had to be strong.
Mm,
And it was three of us that went to St. Francis from DuSable High School here in Chicago. We
mm,
all stayed together. We all graduated together, and we had some very, very good teammates. And the Catholics up there took care of us, and
wow.
we were very fortunate to go there. And it's ballooned into a very, very nice university now for Black athletes. Um,
Great.
and it's unique situation. I'll be celebrating my 50th year of graduating from there in July.
Wow.
So we're getting ready to go up there in July, celebrate 50 years, and I've met some very nice people up there, and had great communications with them and their families, and they've accepted us, and we've accepted them.
Now I know you coached. Did you coach at the same school?
Yes, after my
Wow. That's a legacy. That's a legacy.
well,
Wow.
I was the first African American coach at St. Francis,
Wow.
and after my career was over within the NBA in 1982 and 83, I was hired by St. Francis. I
Mm,
coached there for 4 years and just really enjoyed it. Uh,
mm,
my main goal as a coach was not to win games, and people didn't understand that. My main goal as a
mm.
coach was to see that those players not only got scholarship but received their degrees.
Wow.
Because I had a basketball team that might have had 8 or 9 blacks on there, and sometimes even the white players uh, came from poor backgrounds.
Mhm,
So it's important that you as a coach or me as a coach that we emphasize getting that degree. So
mm.
when they left St. Francis, they very seldom, like you said, 2% goes to the NBA.
Right.
My players didn't go to the NBA, but they did have great jobs. And I hear from them quite often about the businesses that they've opened up, the families they've produced. And it's just been great to see those kids graduate.
Mm. Now, step back a second. You were
Mhm.
drafted in NBA in 1972.
Right.
Now, being a player,
Mhm.
how did that affect you being a coach? Because being a player, being a talented player as you were,
Mhm.
now you're coaching. So
Right.
now you're coaching people that were those super athletes, the stars and the regular people. How did that, from your experience,
Mhm.
bring you to the level that you cared about the players more in their future lives
Right.
versus be a superstar and get that instant glam?
Right. But well, you know what? Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson, they were not good coaches. They were the
Mm,
greatest players,
mhm,
but during their tenure, I don't think Michael had any coaching experience. Magic did with the Lakers, but he
mm.
realized he was not going to find a player as good as so it didn't make him a good coach. And
Oh,
I did have some issues when I see players do things that I know what should have been done that way or
mm,
this way. I had to sit back and understand that these are just kids, and they're learning the game just like I learned the game. I went to another level that they might not never go to. So
mm,
that's why I think I was a fairly decent coach because I didn't expect them to be as great as I was or as good as I was, but I did expect them to go to class every day.
mm,
And I did expect them to be respectful. And I did expect them to make good citizens.
mm.
And that was the priority in my coaching career. That's probably why I didn't last that long. I, I coached 4 years at St. Francis. Usually a halfway decent coach would get 6 years, but I got 4 years. But I moved on to a historical Black university, Central State University in Wilberforce, Ohio.
Mm.
I coached there for 9 years, and
Okay.
I just loved it there. It was just a great transition from me from St. Francis to a historical Black school, and I enjoyed my coaching career.
Mm. Now, does your faith in God, did that affect you when you were playing professional basketball? Did that, because some players, when they get drafted or they're in the NBA, it's all them. No one helped them. God wasn't involved, anything like
Right,
that.
right.
So when you first started, was it more me or was it keeping your Christian beliefs?
Well, I didn't have any Christian beliefs
Oh,
early in my career.
okay.
I believed uh, in Jesus and I knew of God. Um, my mom and dad were not churchgoers.
Mhm.
Uh, 46 in Wabash is where we were raised, and it was a tough upbringing, the Blackstone Rangers and things of that nature.
Mhm.
But I had a wife,
Mm,
and she accepted Christ at 18 years old, and she would continually dwell things into me spiritually. She was always praying for me, and she loved me. And
yeah,
we had three children together. And I knew there was something more than just having money in your pocket, driving in a nice car,
mm,
because I knew that had to come to an end. And
mm,
when that came to an end, I'd say maybe my eighth year in the league, my spirituality grew more.
okay.
And I began to minister to young players.
Mm,
And it helped me also in the coaching aspect, the college coaching, that they knew what I stood for. Um, I tended to deal with depression probably my sixth or seventh year in the NBA. I would go, up and down with my depression, and I needed something, and
mm,
Jesus was my answer.
yeah. So your wife, you actually married her right before the draft, I believe, correct? Or right
You know,
beforehand?
we married in '72. The
Okay.
draft was earlier that year.
Oh, okay.
And we got married in September
Mhm.
and headed out to Baltimore. That's where the Baltimore Bullets franchise was at that time. Now they're in Washington. They're the Washington Wizards, but they were the Baltimore Bullets, and that's where we had our first apartment, and our son Kevin Jr. was born.
So having your wife, do you think that actually was definitely a benefit even for other oh, whoa, you just shook your head. I was gonna say, does that help keep you grounded having a family? But you're shaking your head. So um let's elaborate on that. So you don't think so, or
Having a saved wife was the biggest thing or the greatest thing that happened to me.
okay.
Because we have a tendency of getting that money and running the streets,
Okay.
and I had that tendency,
Mm,
and but I made a decision. Either it was going to be the streets or be the the hoopla about being an NBA basketball player, or it was going to be my family.
mm,
And I decided that my family was more important.
right.
And we went on to have two more daughters, two daughters after that, and eight grandkids later. And God has been faithful, and I'm really, really thankful for her. And you know how you run into people during your course of life, and you realize they saved your life
Yeah.
because I was headed to destruction.
Mm,
And you've seen players in the NBA and the NFL
yes.
destruct.
Right.
So, you have to sooner or later take a stand. And that stand I took was the best thing that ever happened to me.
And that was your wife.
That was my wife.
So um I do want to talk more on your basketball career,
Mhm.
but even with that, you changed from the Baltimore Wizards to a couple other places, the Detroit team
Right.
also. How was that with your family, moving them all over, or just your rock God and your wife that helped keep things okay? Because I would think moving from here and there would just be, or being away from your family would just
Well,
bring on depression or stress.
yeah, it's rough. It's rough, but the pay is worth it. And
Okay.
uh, you knew that the pay would take care of your family no matter where they were at. So my first 3 years in the NBA, I was in the Baltimore, Washington area,
Mhm.
and we were all there together. It,
Okay.
Even if we moved to a different house or a different apartment, we were there for there. And then I got traded, and I got
Mm.
traded from the Washington D.C. area to Detroit. And at that time, uh, I didn't like Detroit at all. But we moved there,
Mhm.
and we moved to the suburbs of Michigan, and eventually we bought a home in Detroit, and it was a great home. We met some great people in Detroit. Motown was just beginning to go to California, and there was quite an array of great people in Detroit.
Mm.
Then all of a sudden, I got traded to New Jersey,
Mm.
and
Oh.
that's where the loneliness came in because I moved into an apartment by myself, and
Mm.
Mrs. Porter was pregnant at that time with our oldest daughter. So moving wasn't a good transition for her or wasn't good for her. So she stayed in the Detroit area until
Uh,
the season was over with. And then God blessed me to be traded back to the Maryland area.
okay.
And we bought a house in Silver Spring, Maryland, where we stayed there for the next 4 years. And then the career came to an end. I tore my Achilles tendon, which is a tendon at the back of your heel,
Hmm.
which is a career-ending injury
Yes.
for certain people, and it
Right.
was for me. And her church was here in Chicago, and she persuaded me that her ministry was in Chicago.
Okay.
So I knew that
Cleota
I was
Porter
headed.
Ministries.
Huh?
Cleota Porter's Ministries, correct?
Well, she wasn't a prophetess at that time, but
Okay.
she believed that her ministry was in Chicago.
Okay.
And so we moved back to the Chicago area, and we've been in this Beverly area for almost 30 years.
Oh, okay. Well, now when you played basketball,
Mhm.
you were a point guard
Correct.
and you had led the season or the team, I guess the season, 4 times in assists. That's when you
Led the
passed the
NBA.
ball
Yeah,
the NBA.
led the NBA in
Right. Led the
assists.
NBA.
Right.
Now, what I've read about you is one of the things is you had just a key sense of you knew who to get the ball to
Right.
help them out to get the point.
Right.
Now, to me, it's like that's sharing in the glory
Right.
because most of the other people want the glory. They're not going to assist. And that,
Right.
yeah, you only have so many people in history that have led the season in
Right.
NBA.
Right.
How was that even with your faith that it sounded like it wasn't all about you and you
Mhm.
brought that over to your coaching?
Mhm. Well, it basically really started uh, my rookie year in the NBA. Uh, you see, I'm only 6 feet tall, and most of the players you play with are 6'5", 6'10", 7 foot. And I wanted a job. And so, in order for me to keep my job, I had to get the basketball to certain people.
Okay.
And that's what people do when you're a point guard. And
Mm,
the people I got the basketball to were the superstars.
mm,
And that enabled me to keep my job because they knew that I would get them the basketball. And that's part of being an assist person. And I did that for 4 years. I led the whole entire NBA for 4 years. And there's only a few players that have done that. Magic Johnson did it for 4 years, but uh, it's a very unique talent. God blessed me with it. And it's a part of your imagination when you're dealing on the basketball floor. And it also helped me as far as my coaching was concerned, because assisting those young people in life was a major part of my life,
right.
being the person that they could call on. I had a birthday last year, and I had close to 30 players that had I have coached somehow contacted me.
Mm,
And that
mm.
made me feel that I've had something to do, even if it's a small part of them being successful citizens, successful fathers, husbands, and it's just a great feeling.
So your calling wasn't just done with playing on the professional floor, it was also being the coach on the sideline, coaching others.
Yes, and I'm the oldest of 10 kids, and
Wow.
yeah, and it was it was a they kind of followed me, knowing that I was the first to get a college degree,
Hmm.
uh, knowing that you had to work hard in order to be successful in whatever you did. Being a 6 footer in the NBA was very rare. You don't even see them now. Very few guys are 6 feet. Even Steph Curry is 6'3", and
I
those
think BJ, I can't think of his last name from the Bulls, BJ
B.J. Armstrong, yeah,
Armstrong, right. He was
he's
like
tall.
5'11.
No, he's a little taller than that.
Oh,
But
he
any
was.
Yeah, but anyway, it was it's a great feeling when you do assist people,
Right.
whether it be And we also would do basketball camps where we would deal with real young people. I mean,
Mhm.
you're talking about seventh and eighth graders, and you would give them some type of direction in life, and it's worthwhile.
So with your height, did that um hold you back? Are you thinking you couldn't do this because of your height? Did you think that was negative for you?
Oh, no question. I even after 4 years in college, I averaged like 24 points a game for 4 years, and
Mm.
I had All American recommendation, but I didn't know if I could play at the next level.
Okay.
And they drafted me a gentleman by the name of Bob Ferry. He was a scout, and I was playing in a tournament in Portsmouth, Virginia, and he thought I could make it at the next level.
Mm.
So they drafted me second uh, in the '72 draft, and the rest was history. I was pretty successful.
Mm. That's good to hear that some people think that
Hmm.
because certain items, like even your height, could hold you back, but you overcame something, even a physical thing. Because right, you're 6 foot, and
Right,
it's weird because I'm under 5. I just assume you were a giant in the sevens or something.
right. I was matter of fact,
I'm short.
yeah, I was the smallest player on my high school team, my college
Really?
my college team, and all the three professional teams I played for. I was the smallest.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't hear that, and that you've
right,
accomplished so much, and you didn't have that superior, physique as the other players. That's just amazing.
right. That's when your speed, your quickness, and your mentality comes into play.
Mhm.
That's when you use those three assets that God has blessed you with in order to be successful. A lot of basketball players think that height and strength is the main part of the game.
Mhm.
It's not. It's who could get to that point the quickest.
Oh.
If Steph Curry beats you to a point the quickest where he can get his jump shot off, I don't know how much you know about basketball, but if he can get his jump shot off the
Mhm.
quickest, he's going to be more successful than someone that's 6'8" that's guarding him because he made it to that point. So it's about angles and things like that. But quickness is a very important part.
So when you were playing, you were more strategic, you were thinking constantly, strategizing. You were in the game mentally versus some people physically that you're 7'2", you just raise your hand up and put the
Right,
ball
right,
in.
right.
You had to do the whole game there. And I would assume that prepared you for coaching also, since
Hmm.
you could strategize the whole game while you were playing. You can strategize the whole game coaching it, correct?
Well, yes, correct. Point guards are supposed to be good coaches.
Mm.
Matter of fact, the Dallas coach, Jason Kidd, he's the coach of this Dallas team right now. He was a point guard.
Mhm.
Steve Kerr, coach of Golden State, he was a point guard. And it's just, it's really a confident thing that when you're coach or owner of a franchise, you're talking millionaire owners, when they okay it to put the ball in your hand, you're in charge of $1 million organization.
Mm.
And that's what happened to me during those 11 years in the NBA. And for those years, I proved that I was the best passer in the game. And you just try to direct the team into wins and try not to have as many losses as wins. So,
Right.
but yeah, it's a strategy involved.
Yeah, okay.
Hmm.
Now, when you were separated from your family, and I know that took a toll on you,
Hmm.
um, how did that affect your game? Do you think that hindered your game more being separated from your family or even you spiritually or mentally? Because family, which is important to you, especially you say you have 10 brothers or 10 siblings, including
Hmm.
you,
Hmm.
being away and separated, I would have think that would affect even your game, your mentality in the game.
Well, that's where your professionalism comes in. You
Mhm.
have to make adjustments, whether you're home or you're away. But I enjoyed playing basketball in front of my family. Uh, my kids, my children, they would come to the game and so forth. But
Mm.
then when you're away from them, it is a mental thing because not only do you have to concentrate on the game, you have to concentrate on what goes on after the game.
Mm.
Either you decide to go home and get something to eat, or you go out and party and destroy your career. And stabilizing yourself is very important, but family is much more important than that. And
Mm.
it came to a situation where certain organizations are family organization orientated.
Okay.
The Washington D.C. family, Mr. Poland, the owner who's deceased now, he was very family orientated.
Mm.
So that passed on to his players. And then you might go to an organization like in New Jersey, there wasn't a lot of family things going on, and it proved and showed in your record. So it's just an adjustment as a professional athlete.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
We have a few more minutes left.
Okay.
Um, One of my questions, what I wanted to say was, how did you have any struggles when it came to coaching versus being a player?
Struggles
Like
in
dealing
the
with coaches, other players, or just the fame? You're
I was a hot hit.
constantly on stage in the sense. Whenever you walk out, I'm assuming you probably couldn't go to regular stores or you go to dinner, people knew you.
Right.
How did that struggle that you
Well,
dealt with?
I wasn't that big of a superstar. I was just an average player. Down in DC, I would get recognized in public and so forth. But I was also a very fiery player. I mean, being 6 feet, you always thought people were taking advantage of you on the court. So
Oh,
you would fire back at them and be very, very tough. There's a thing that they call foul outs. That means if you get 5 fouls in a game, you foul out, or six
right.
fouls in the NBA. I led the whole entire NBA in 1 year because 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 I thought people were trying to take advantage of me. But as I matured uh, and became more confident in myself,
Mm,
I began to mellow out and
okay.
just play the game of basketball. But even as a coach, I was kind of a fiery little hothead. And
Mm,
at halftime, my players would, be on the lookout. Here he comes.
you
But
know,
but everything leveled out, and I became a little bit mellow. Yeah.
well, last question, because we're down to a couple minutes. Last
Okay.
question. If you could go back in time to say something to the young Kevin
Mhm.
Porter, what would you say a piece of advice?
Well, the greatest piece of advice, and I'll give this today, is to make sure that you get your degree.
Mm,
Whatever you decide to do, if you go to college or you even go to a junior high school where you can get your junior college, get your associate degree, make sure you get your degree, because you gave a percentage early into the interview, about 2%, and you have to be able to uh, support your family. And that degree will help you support. Even after 11 years in the NBA, I still struggled financially, but I had a degree to bounce back on, uh,
okay.
because you can't coach college basketball unless you have your degree. You can't go to the public school system unless you have your degree. So that's very, very important in order to establish some type of finances for you and your families. Get your degree. Don't leave college without
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you
Mhm.
very much for that piece of advice.
Mhm.
Um, well, we're wrapping up the show. The show topic was spiritual faith and professional sports. And we had a NBA great here, Kevin Porter, played for Baltimore back in the 70s and 80s. I want to thank you for coming on the show, Kevin.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Um, Everyone, until next time, you can watch us on YouTube, various TV channels across the country. Subscribe to our channel on Facebook. Thank you very much and have a nice evening.
All
Thank
right,
you, Kevin.
Janice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye
All right.
bye.